The opinions and statements made by the guests of the Success in Practice podcast are their own, and I do not endorse or accept responsibility for their positions. Any information given by myself or the guests is educational in intention and not to be taken as medical advice. If you choose to act on the content involved in the podcast, you do so at your own risk.
Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Success in Practice podcast. Today I'm joined by Damian Poustie, who is a graduate of Victoria University in 2002. Damian is an osteopath and is the CEO of Premier Sports and Spinal Medicine in Melbourne, Victoria. He's also the head of Melbourne Headache Solutions, the Health Collective, and Premier Pilates. With over 20 years of experience, Damian has a special interest in the sports and performance side of things and has set up Premier Sports and Spinal as a clinic with a holistic approach that combines the best of allied health. He's a big believer in a team-based approach and has since utilised the same philosophy to open new clinics that help with headaches, TMJ, and spinal conditions. This experience has provided Damian with expertise in clinic marketing and growth. He now helps more healthcare professionals start and grow their businesses. We know that healthcare professionals are exceptional with their clinical patient skills. However, they all struggle with some of the business and marketing side of things, and this is where Damian has been able to help people. He's married with 2 children and continues to be a clinician whilst running his clinics and helping others with marketing theirs. Damian, thanks for being on the podcast, mate. I know it's late and you've taken some time to be here, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, amazing, Sammy. I've been looking forward to doing this for a good few months now, and I love your T-shirt as well. Make Osteopathy great again.
I think it's growing, mate. It's we're recording this today. Today's the 6th of November, and I think the election's just been called. So
yes,
it's odd. I think the theme of the podcast over the last probably 20 something episode has been trying to get some of the the philosophy and principles of osteopathy back into osteopathic education. Mm-hmm. And one of my previous guests kind of mentioned that, and I thought that'll make a catchy T-shirt. So here they are, guys. If you're interested, please mention it in the comments. Happy to send T-shirts out at the right price, obviously. But definitely just put these up, and if people like them, just let me know, and we can make them available to you. Damian, mate, again, I really appreciate you being here, and I know that we've both been looking forward to this because I know that you've been seeing what I've been doing with Success in Practice, and I've recently been following what you're doing with a lot of the marketing work that you do, and I've had to do some research on yourself and had a look at a few of the clinics that you've built over the many years. So I'm really interested in finding out more about what you do, and I guess giving people an insight as to how you can help them as well. But before I do that, I want to get a little backstory about you. I want to know about kind of, how you grew up, what were some of the early influences, about your school life, and what got you into osteopathy? When did you start osteopathy and what got you there?
Yeah, interesting story on a number of fronts, I think. From the age of 12, I think, like early teenage years, back then, I didn't know what osteopathy was, but I was an avid sportsman. I was always in and out of the physio and the chiro. I was tall and lanky, injured every week. So literally every week, every fortnight, I was in the physio clinic. And I knew from an early age that I wanted to be, back then it was a physio. And I think for a lot of kids, they don't know what they want to do for a long period of time. So that was really unique that from that age, I was like 100%, this is what I want to do with my life. But interestingly enough, even back then, I was like, I want to do that and help people, but do it differently. So back in the day, when you went to see a physio, it was ultrasound, it was traction. They were seeing multiple patients, and it looked
with the
cool.
curtains. You had the curtains there.
Yeah, it looked cool because they were helping me. Mm. But even back then, I knew that I wanted to do it differently. And fast forward a few years, someone said, "Oh, have you thought about osteopathy? It sounds like you want to be an osteopath." And I'm like, I've never heard of that. So they introduced me to osteopathy. I went and checked them out, and soon, instead of seeing physios and chiros, I was seeing osteos, and I thought this is what healthcare should be: longer appointment times. Like certainly compared to what physio was back then, things have changed now. More care, better results, and like really, like they got to know me as a person. So it wasn't just that you were on the conveyor belt just going in and out. You treated the way I felt, even as a teenager, that I should be treated. So pretty much through high school, it was just one track mind, get good grades, go to university, study osteopathy. Once university was a great time. I had an absolute ball there. And I would say I had the privilege of learning at Vic Uni under Gibbons and Tian. And maybe for many of the listeners, they may not who they are, or they might. They certainly wrote a few textbooks. And I'm not sure if they're still in the educational system here in Melbourne. But the standards that they set at university, like the benchmark, was exceptionally high. And although it was tough at the time, it was like, I feel that we all came out exceptional practitioners. The standards were super high, and they didn't take any crap. Like you were there to be the best osteopath you could be. And, I think we had maybe 20, 25 contact hours per week. They're like, you do double that at home and you better come prepared for class. And, once again, it was incredibly hard, but the standards were super high. And I think it had a lasting impact on myself and other people that I went through university with. Before
you go, I want to let you continue on that topic, but before we go too far into university life, I want to take you back to, I guess, your younger years, maybe even back in high school or school. Right now, I was speaking to you earlier. You said to me that you're really into sales and marketing, and you want to really understand the psychology of that and how that works. And
yes,
did you find that at a young age you were interested in that too? Like, was there something there? Did you have that kind of spirit about you as a young man? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I wouldn't say sales and marketing at that time, but certainly business. So I grew up in a family. My dad, in the early years, he had 5 real estate agencies, and he had those 5 real estate agencies until the recession that we had to have in the 80s.
Yeah.
And people went from buying houses, and we lived quite a good life, to people stopped buying houses. Like they describe it as literally overnight. Interest rates, I think, were 17 or 18%. So all his businesses just went plummeted down.
Yeah, that was like in 95, I think, when I think Paul Keating was Prime Minister, and I think 96 was the election between Paul Keating and John Howard, or 97 from memory.
Yep.
Yeah,
possibly.
So it would have been around that time?
Yes.
Or even earlier?
All I remember, like every evening after dinner, it was talking business. From a very early age, the good and the bad and the ugly.
Yeah.
And after the real estate agency, so owning those agencies during that time was pretty much impossible. Sold out of them, and then bought into a franchise system called ChemDry, which is flood damage restoration and carpet cleaning.
This is your father?
At that time, I had the opportunity to invest in that business.
Right.
So they said, if you want to be part of the business, you got to pay. So I think I was 12 or 13 at the time, and I'm like, all right, I got money saved up from working odd jobs and that sort of thing. And so at that age, I was a business owner.
Right.
And I would say that had a lasting impact, because now I was active and involved in the conversations. I didn't have a board at the table, so to speak. I didn't really have a say, but they involved me in aspects of the business from a very early age.
Yeah, still in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They ended up with 8 franchises, quite a large business. And again, just being part of that journey, it was really, I found it interesting because at university, as we were approaching graduation, people would say, oh, I can't wait to own my own practice. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to have 5. And this wasn't like, it's not coming out of ego or anything like that, but it was just, it was normal in our family that we owned our own business, and each business that I witnessed as being part of the family was not just one; it was like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. And I think once again, when you're just surrounded by that environment, it just becomes the normal. And I'm sure there's plenty of people that are involved in their families have much larger businesses, hundreds of millions of dollars and that sort of thing. And maybe their standard is even up here. It's 20 franchises or 30 or 50 or something like that. And I think that really set the scene for the intention that I set for me and my career.
Right. And so when you would listen to some of your classmates, I guess, telling you that they wanted to own their own business, did a part of you kind of sit there and go, you really don't know what you're getting yourself into?
I don't think so. We all, I think when you're young and, you've been studying for 5 years or something like that, you see the glossy side of it.
Yeah.
And
right.
even though I was involved in the family business, you're young and dumb and naive, and you don't really know. So definitely at that point, it was, I'm going to see 50 patients a week, and they're going to pay me $50, and I'm going to take all that money, and I'm going to be wealthy. Right. And then the reality of business is very different, especially today.
Yes.
Like things are more challenging today than what they were 20, 30, 40 years ago, where you could just put up a sign and do really well.
Yeah. And one thing I guess is that, back then you could rely on your own skill set. It wasn't, word of mouth was such a great influence. And if you were a good quality practitioner, once you got a few people better, the word would just spread. Whereas now it's a lot more of a competitive market, and you need to do more than that. But before we get on to something like that, let's take you back now to the conversation you were having. You're at university, Gibbons and Tian are there. They're breaking your backside, making sure that you guys are setting a really high standard. Tell us about those years. Tell us about the early university years when you first got there. I mean, had you seen an osteopath before? Did you know what it was? Did you kind of know what to expect? What were those first 6 months like?
Yeah, I had frequented many osteopaths and chiros and physios, but many more osteopaths in the later years. So I kind of knew what to expect. Certainly university life at the start was a bit of a shock, especially being spoon-fed in high school. It was literally learn this, the test is going to be on this. If you know that, you're going to do well. And with Gibbons and Tian, it was like, here's the information that you need to know by the next lecture. And when you come, like one of you is going to present on it. And I'm like, this is really different to what I know. And it was just next level expectations. Mm-hmm. Yep. And also I'd say, like back then we had so many contact hours. Like half the time we were sitting around in large conference rooms with treatment tables in our boxer shorts, just hanging out, palpating, learning to be an osteopath. And I think, COVID has changed a lot of things where sometimes students are going in for 2, 3, 4 hours a week and they don't have the same contact time that we had back then. And I think learning hands-on for osteopathy, so important.
Oh, we'll get to that. We'll definitely get to that. That is important. We'll discuss that a bit later. Fast forward. You get through, and at that time, just educate me. The Vic Uni course was a double degree, or was it a undergraduate
5-year
master's?
Double degree, bachelor, and then masters. Right.
So 5-year double degree, bachelor, and then masters, and it was a 2-year masters back then. I think it's a 4.5-year course at the moment. Correct me if I'm wrong. But back then it was a 5-year, 3-year undergraduate, 2-year masters. You finish your undergraduate, your masters, I guess, is where you start your clinical work. And VU, the first year of VU was in 98. So you guys had only had maybe 4 years of people before you, or maybe 3 years of people before you. what was that like, having a pretty much a brand new clinic, really?
Mm.
Was that something that you guys had to work at in terms of getting the place busy, or was it already busy and you just took over some patients?
It was not busy at all.
Right.
So the if you're talking about the clinic in
Yes.
university, the student clinic,
Yes.
it struggled to attract people in.
Okay.
Yep.
And were there any lessons for you from that at that early point? Like, do you remember taking some lessons away from that?
Yeah, actually, what I did, so I realized that I wasn't going to get that hands-on practice at university. So we were lucky to see one or two clients per clinic shift. And so back in the day, this is what we did. We got a remedial massage qualification, so we could get insurance to like professional indemnity insurance. And I started working from home with families and family members, friends. And that was the best thing that I could have done. So I would have 5 or 10 people that would come to my house every week, and they knew I was a student studying osteopathy. And I would do, I would help them. They had sporting injuries, they had
Yeah.
neck pain, they had back pain. And, I forget how much I charged. It was maybe $25 or $30. And it was great. So I was getting paid to utilize my skills and learn. And of course, they were fully aware of what the situation was.
Yeah, you'd sneak in a few HVTs here and there, definitely.
We did
With your family and friends, you're sneaking, doing some remedial massage, but you're sneaking a few adjustments, I guess, to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you do. All right. And, okay, so clinic life kind of was, I guess, quiet compared to what you wanted it to be when you graduated. Fast forward, you finish university. And then what happened? Where did you go? What was your thought process? I'm about to finish. Is it I want to get out there on my own, or is it I need some experience and I want to find someone to kind of latch onto and learn from?
Yeah, the first thing for me was to head to Europe. So that was always my plan once I graduated.
Yeah.
Was to get out of Melbourne. My friends had done it a few years before me.
Yeah.
At the time of their lives. So as soon as I graduated, I jumped on a plane. I went to Europe. I landed in London and probably spent 6 weeks there, 8 weeks there. At the time, the Aussie dollar to pound ratio was like 3-1. So money disappeared really, really quickly coming with the Aussie dollar. And there was a job advertised in a place called Dundee in Scotland, middle of nowhere. And I'm like, I'm young, like whatever, I don't care. I'm just going to go experience the world. So I traveled up to Dundee and worked in a very well-known, like small osteopathic clinic with an old school practitioner.
Right.
And like it was great. And I spent a year there and I learnt a lot. And I think the great thing about working in the UK, so back then, 20 years ago, we would be explaining what osteopathy was in Australia. Osteopath, that's bones or something. And I'm like, here it is. Whereas when I went to Europe, I would start to explain it and they'll look at me stupidly and they're like, we know what an osteopath is. We all go to see an osteopath. So that was so refreshing. And in my first year, I was seeing 40, 50, 60 patients a week. Easy. 20 patients a day was not unusual.
All right. And looking back on that experience at that volume, how crucial do you think that was to your development as a practitioner?
So important. So important. So having the volume, but also having a supportive environment where somebody more senior that had experience was able to go over case studies, share their knowledge with you. And so my first clinic was an osteopathic clinic in Dundee. The second one, after a year, I got a little bit sick of the small Dundee life. And I went to a place called Canterbury down in the southeast. And I worked, there was 2 or 3 clinics there owned by the same couple that were both osteopaths. And again, very high volume of patients, but they also worked with physios, osteos, some other practitioners as well. And that really opened my eyes at that point in time to the effectiveness of learning from other people from outside disciplines. So it was great to have an experienced osteopath that I could learn from and refine my skills. But then the physios, so back then osteopaths didn't do rehab. There was
Right.
like you just did osteopathic technique. And the physios were like, oh, have you thought about doing this? And they might suggest some rehab exercises and that sort of thing. And I'm like, oh, no, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
And so being in an environment where you can learn from different types of people and have enough patience to gain your experience was absolutely crucial.
And
It was the best experience for me.
were you a relatively confident graduate, or did you gain some of that confidence in the first year or two of practice?
I was confident because in the last 2 years, I saw patients in my own house.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
So by the time you graduated, you hit the ground running. It wasn't like that you had some anxieties about what you're going to do. And right. Okay. Well, that's good. And
I'm sure I would have if I only had the student clinic.
yeah. Did some of your, I guess, colleagues at the time who only had the student clinic, did you notice that was a theme there, or was the expectation from the course that high that it all drove you all to a better standard?
I think so many of us got our remedial massage kind of license and did that. Like it was quite common for us to do that back then.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if there was a difference, but the standards were high, whether you got that experience in clinic or with family and friends, either paid or free. Like you had to do something to pass.
Yeah, right. Okay, so Canterbury happens, and then what? Where do you go from there, from Canterbury?
So 3 years in Canterbury, got a little bit tired of living in England with the weather and decided to come back to Australia. And it took me a little while to figure out where I was going to settle. And eventually settled on a place in Fitzroy North.
Okay.
So there was an old GP clinic that had 4 consulting rooms. And 20 years ago, Fitzroy North was not a desirable place like it is today.
Okay.
So Fitzroy North today, $2 million houses. Back then, it was a bit like Collingwood, sort of like lots of drug use, housing commission, and it was just kind of burgeoning. So it had quite a rough edge to it.
Yeah.
But it was a cool area. So
just for our listeners, give us an idea. Fitzroy North is, I guess, where from the centre of Melbourne? Are we north, south, east, west?
It's about 2 or 3 kilometres north from Melbourne CBD.
North of Melbourne CBD, right? Okay, so you're not far out.
Not far out. It's a beautiful spot now.
Okay. All right. So you settled in Fitzroy North, and did you find a clinic to work there, or did you kind of just want to work on your own from that point on?
Yeah. So I leased the entire medical clinic. It was on a prime position, corner of Nicholson and Holden Street, and back then I put up a sign, and because there wasn't a lot of competition in the area, first week I had 5-7 new patients just from the sign.
Right, and we're talking circa 2006-7, is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Yeah, okay. So you put up a sign, opened up, you had all this space. I'm assuming you probably just needed one room in a reception area, but you had a lot more space than that.
Yes.
Did you then think, well, hey, I've got all this space, I've got to fill it up somehow? What happened? Did you just spend some time building that practice, or did you straight away kind of go, I need to, bring on a few more allied health or a few more osteopaths straight away?
Yeah. No, for the first, I would say probably 8 to 9 months, it was just me working in the practice with the ambition just to get busy.
Okay.
So at that point in time, I was confident in me and my ability, and that if I had new patients coming in, that I could build a successful practice around me. And I think maybe 9 months into it, I hired a second osteopath.
Okay. And at what point did you hire an administrative staff, I guess a receptionist?
Oh, that is a good question. Probably delayed that way too long. Tried to juggle doing everything myself.
Okay. Yeah. So in retrospect, that wasn't the best decision. Would you have hired the admin staff first before the osteopath?
I don't think so. No.
Right.
It was kind of manageable. But not ideal.
Okay.
Certainly back then, it's like, I could hire somebody and they're going to answer 2 phone calls, and then the rest of the time, what are they going to do? They're going to sit around for 90% of the time.
Right.
And it was, yeah, like you need to make that decision at some point. And, investing in your admin team, it's an expensive thing to do.
I guess Damien back then probably didn't know what Damien now knows.
Exactly.
And if Damien back then knew what Damien now knows, you probably wouldn't have had someone sitting around just answering 2 phone calls. They would have answered
100%.
probably 5 or 6 phone calls and be doing a whole bunch of other stuff to help grow the business.
Yeah,
And so I guess there's always lessons in these podcasts about people getting shortcuts out of these podcasts from the lessons that we learn. And I guess one of these shortcuts is you can learn from someone like Damien who's done it before. If you are starting a practice and you want to grow it, and the receptionist is only going to be answering a few phone calls every hour. Well, there's a whole bunch of other stuff they could be doing, and you've got to make sure that you fill up that time for them, and that'll really help you, I guess, just do what you do best. Okay, so you grew that practice. You brought on another osteopath, a second osteopath. Was that the beginning of Premier Sports and Spinal? Was that right? And
Yes.
so how long did you kind of continue growing that? Over how many years, and what kind of growth did you see? Like, were you seeing 20, 30% growth each year? What kind of growth did you see in the business there?
That's a good question, and you're testing my memory. And as you know, it gets worse and worse with age. I would say in the early days, it's not unusual to see something like 30% growth.
Correct.
Because you're in a very strong growth phase, and especially, I was quite lucky to land in an area that was up and coming without much competition, and at that time it was quite easy to get started and grow the clinic and try lots of different things at the time. And later on we can talk about the different things, and like things are quite different. Like if we're just talking about the admin thing, there's other ways to get your admin covered that doesn't require the same investment in people as what it did back then. So you've got like a remote service that can, handle your calls over a period of time until you get to that critical point where then you can get somebody that come in and there's enough work for them to do. Back in the day, that wasn't really an option.
Correct. Yes. Now we mentioned that Premier Sports and Spinal kind of started around 2006, 2007. That was at the same time where Google Ads was kind of starting to become, and I guess pay-per-click was a thing, and that was really cheap back in those days. That's when I started to get onto it. It was something like, it was ridiculous, like 3 cents a click, which is ridiculously low. Was that something you looked at back then, or is that something that happened later on?
So besides from the signage, the next thing that we did was Yellow Pages.
Right.
Yep. And so
describe to people what Yellow Pages is in case they don't know, some of the listeners.
It's a telephone book where you list your business. So it was the thing that you went to before the 2000s were a thing.
Yeah.
So you had this big yellow book, and you'd go to plumbers if you needed a plumber, osteopaths if you needed an osteopath.
And people would call themselves AAA osteopaths to get at the front of the book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So
I spent quite a bit of money on that at the start, because that's what I knew. The previous businesses that I had, the flood damage restoration business and the real estate business, they leveraged them really, really successfully. So I jumped on that. And the other thing that I used was working with gyms and local businesses and doing things like injury screenings.
Yep.
That was the other thing back in the day that really, really served me well. And I think it's the thing that will hold true today.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And so
definitely
I'll do a 2-hour gym screening and easily get 5 to 10 new patients from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. That's a big lesson for people out there. That stuff never fades away. Like, I think you can do all the digital stuff you want to do, but if you really want to invest time in going down to a gym, going to a yoga studio, going to a Pilates studio, going to anywhere where people are looking at health, you'll get some good traction there. Okay, so you looked at, I guess, you had signage, you did the Yellow Pages, business was growing by about 20 or 30% per year. You took on a second osteopath, and that second osteopath in those days was probably a contractor. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Right. And so in those days, the contract model was probably the go-to model for people. How did you find that experience in terms of negotiating a contract with somebody for the first time? I know now that you probably got a lot more experience, but back in those, when you were negotiating your first contract, where did you go? Like, how, you don't kind of know what to do. You've been taught osteopathy. You haven't really been taught business. I know that you had it with your dad and your parents, but how did you learn how to negotiate a contract?
We still do it today, and we leverage things from colleagues and friends. So certainly back then, because I'd been overseas for a number of years, a number of my friends started their clinics earlier on, and they already had experience in that. So they might have had a lawyer draw up a contract, and they shared with me their experience. And you'd kind of take that, and I guess you kind of felt like you had the upper hand at that point in time, like you were the boss, the employer, and you had a position to offer. And there was fairly standard, percentages that you would offer. So I think at that particular point in time, it was pretty straightforward. The challenge arises with the never-ending request for higher percentages without recognition that the business has overheads. And it reminds me, so in my last job in Canterbury, I was paid 65%.
Okay.
And at one point, I had a discussion with my partner at the time, and she was like, you should ask for 70. And I'm like, yeah, I should. I deserve 70. She drives a nice BMW. She's got no overheads, completely ignorant of anything. And she was Polish, and she very unpolitely told me to go away.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And rightfully so, because I was really good, really good wicket. And she was great. She supported me a lot, and she gave me a bit of an education on how businesses operate, expenses, and helped me to realize that I was actually on a really, really good deal at the time.
Right. So she let you in on all the numbers, basically, when you had that conversation with her, because this is important. You went there, you said, look, I want 70%, I'm on 65. Did she just say, did she flick you off and say, no, I'm not giving you that, go away? Or did she sit you down and say, look, these are my expenses, this is what it costs me to run the clinic, these are the overheads, this is what you make, this is what your expenses are, and did she give you an insight into the numbers? Did that did that open your eyes to what she's going through?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's like, I remember this experience like it happened yesterday, because in talking to my partner and only kind of giving selective information to her, it made me feel like that I had a right to ask, and not asking like, I was somehow losing out. So I had this altered perception of reality. And she was really, really good, because I think at the start she was quite shocked by it, because in her mind it was like, you're already getting a really good deal, so why are you coming to ask me for like even more? And later on she sat down and she took the time to take me through it. And it was at that point that I'm like, okay, I'm the one that feels bad now, because I thought she was making lots of money off me, but in reality, like, she wasn't. Like, it was really, when I looked at the numbers, the most likely thing that it was costing her money to have me there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with a principal making money. Like, there's this thing that, it's like there's a certain, I guess, misconception in osteopathy, or maybe even it's across healthcare, but I'm an osteopath and that's all I know, is that somehow if the principal makes some money, they're doing something a bit unethical. There's an investment there. Whether you're an employee using an employee model or a contractor model, what's the point in me or you having somebody there if we're not going to make some money? Like, I might as well just see the patients myself and do it all myself. So obviously you learned that, and she showed you that, and And that, I guess that was a good experience. Now, I want to keep you in the UK for a little bit because they're your early years. Tell us about your actual clinical practice. Were you a very direct practitioner?
Mhm.
Tell us how you practice. Like, tell us about your
Yeah.
thought process and what you like to do and how you would, I guess, structure your initial consultation and then how you would structure your treatment.
Yeah. So very direct practitioner.
Mm.
We did lots of soft tissue, lots of mobilization, lots of manipulation. At the time, we didn't really do any rehab. There might be one or two exercises to do, but it was like, oh, we're just going to give them to the patient so they feel like I don't care if you do them or not because it's less important than the work that I'm doing. And it was very holistic.
Mm.
And the reason I'm saying that because it's one of the principles of osteopathy, but something's happened over time. And it was really normal for us to assess like the whole person. So if someone came in with neck pain, like we were doing everything like from the pelvis all the way up, shoulder girdle, and seeing with kind of like intrigue and wonder how everything was connected. Okay, and sometimes it really was, and then other times it was less relevant. And then fast forward today, there seems to be less of that. Like it's
Mm.
very, oh well, you've got neck pain, then I'm going to hone in on this particular area. I'm going to
Mm.
diagnose, hopefully, the tissues causing the symptoms, and then maybe as an afterthought, oh, I better look above and below,
Mm.
and that would be it. There wouldn't be anything else beyond that. So I've seen this real shift over time, and I think we're losing the stuff that made osteopathy so effective and great. I couldn't wait to get that in.
So this is the theme, right? But anyway, we'll get there. We do want to make osteopathy great again. But so look, I want to hold you there for a minute because you brought up a very a topic that I'm interested in, especially in the rehab space. Tell us about the rehab component at Vic Uni at the time of your education. Was there a rehab component to your education?
No.
No. So that's a very direct answer. Okay. So there wasn't even a rehab subject. Is that correct? Because we went through university at the same time. I
Like,
think you,
okay, there was,
yeah,
but it was perhaps a 30 or 60-minute lecture on the shoulder.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And so like it was, although I guess they were trying to implement something,
Hmm.
it wasn't something that you could actually utilize in practice.
Looking back now, why do you think that was? I mean, it's not that like it hasn't been done. It's not like rehab is a new thing, right? Like, I mean, strength and conditioning has been around for a long time. And it's not like we want to be trainers, but we do have principles of, I guess, the stress recovery adaptation principles of getting progressive overload, I guess, overloading
Mhm.
tissues to get a response. And so we know that that's been around for a long time. It's nothing new. Why do you think that the profession, I guess, took its time in terms of trying to understand rehabilitation? And I still don't think they do understand it really well. Why do you think that at the time there was no rehabilitation component? Hello, everyone. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank everyone for watching and listening to the podcast. If you have received value from this episode, the kindest thing you can do for me is to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the channel on whichever platform that you are listening on. If any of the conversations have resonated with you and you feel that I can help elevate your practice, you can find me at successinpractice.net. That is, the Success in Practice program can be found at successinpractice.net. The Success in Practice program is the signature program that takes a practitioner who may be struggling with retaining patients. They may not be certain about building effective treatment strategies, and they may feel somewhat anxious and doubtful about what they are going to do with a patient. And they are not really accelerating in the real world of private practice. It takes this practitioner and it turns their careers right around to the point where the patients have an effective diagnosis and a real treatment plan that they can take home. Patients are happy to book in multiple sessions with you and they are confident about your abilities. And more importantly, you now have direction and are confident about your own abilities.
The program streamlines how you operate as a practitioner. Guys, you should have been taught this at university, but you weren't. You may have been practicing for the last few years thinking there has to be a better way. There has to be a more effective way of engaging with patients and getting them results. Well, there is. And this is what the program delivers. Go to successinpractice.net and check out the options available to you. See where I can help you easily grow your patient list and finally earn the rewarding income that you deserve. For all the information on how you can reach me personally, check out the show notes. Also in the show notes, you'll find a link to the chat transcripts from these podcasts. These are valuable and a wealth of information. I really hope that you're enjoying the podcast. Guys, leave a comment if there's any questions on this episode. And please, don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the channel. Now, back to the show.
Or an effective one, at least.
That they probably didn't have, potentially the staff to be able to teach it. Because if you think back, those people that were lecturers at university, they might have graduated 10, 15 years ago. And probably at that time, it wasn't even a thing. It wasn't part of the training. It wasn't part of their practice. I would say fast forward to today, it's probably very, very different. And a lot of the principles of osteopathy are, it is find it, fix it, leave it alone type thing. We're in there, we're doing something to the patient. And I think there's some really good things that can come from that, like our ability to assess and view the patient holistically and find out exactly what's going on, not just treat the painful area. There's so many good things that come from that. And then when you combine the modern stuff with rehab, strength and conditioning type principles, it's incredibly powerful. But, you can't really rehab something if the structure is off. And I really like, at least these are purely my thoughts, having osteopathy to build the foundation, ensure structural integrity, alignment, and then start to build on top of that capacity, strength, endurance, power.
Yeah.
That works really well. And, some professions tend to do less of the structure and function and move straight into the rehab.
So just so I can understand your particular position on this, your personal position on this, and so you feel that osteopathy is the actual treatment, that's the medicine, and then the rehabilitation is the thing that builds upon that after, I guess, the treatment has had an effect on the structure and you've brought balance back to the system.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, it is a continuum.
Yeah.
But if you want to make it, like that, then I would say that's a fair assumption.
Yeah. Well, I had this conversation with Ann Cooper on the first podcast, the first ever podcast of the series, and then recently we had a conversation as well, and she said the same thing. She said that exercise is not medicine. What we do in the clinic is the treatment that gets people back into balance, and then after that, if you want to go and give them exercises and rehabilitation, then that of course helps. But the problem that she saw was that we're replacing the treatment with the actual exercise, and you can't get a tissue that's contracted and ask it to contract some more and expect it to improve. Yep. So that's her particular position. I vetted my position to her at the time that, exactly what you just said, our treatment is the medicine. Our treatment is what we do to help bring balance to the structure, and then we build. That's a great foundation to then go and build upon. So, look, to add to what you said, I think partly with the change in the sedentary lifestyle of the majority of the population. I mean, if you look back to the 50s and 60s, people were quite active, back then, men were a lot more active in their workspace, in their workplaces. So, I guess all you had to do, is treat somebody and just ask them to go live. And because their life was very active, it would almost spur on their own rehabilitation. And as times have changed and I guess workers have become more sedentary, sitting behind desks, we can't ask that of them. And we have to give them something to bring about that stimulation. So I think the change in that didn't really catch on to osteopaths until very recently. And I don't think we've even formulated a really coherent approach to rehabilitation that that relies on our foundations. I mean, we've tried to take things from strength and conditioning. We've tried to take things from physiotherapy. You look at a lot of the chiropractic, what's going on in chiropractic now, where they're really manipulating the spine and then doing rehab. There's no real continuum. And we have an opportunity here as osteopaths to have a real continuum in the rehab space where we apply our philosophy to rehabilitation, that we don't just rehabilitate a hamstring, that we look at an entire movement pattern and we rehabilitate that movement pattern. You know, we look at squatting and deadlifting and primal movement patterns that can really help with basic human movement. And then we look at the weak link in that chain and we help it come along with the rest of the whole structure.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm big on all that stuff. But I don't think we've really vetted this out as a profession. We haven't gotten together and found something that we can teach people at university that I think falls in place with osteopathic principles. And so is that something that you want to, do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that? Do you see that that's a space that's still there for us to exploit?
Yeah, and I think you're correct with that, and I think the challenge lies in that there's so many different options. So you can take a Pilates approach, you can take a strength and conditioning approach. There's a whole bunch of other like primitive patterns and things like that, and I think it's going to be really hard to get some sort of consensus statement on the right approach.
Yeah, right.
The thing that I found really, really helpful was Pilates.
Okay.
There's a lot of similarities, and I'm talking about classical Pilates here. There's a lot of similarities between osteopathy. They would look at the person move and see how, you know, the calf connected to the hip and the back. And part of the treatment for a shoulder problem was working on core or pelvis or opposite hamstring or something like that. And I really liked it because it leveraged my existing kind of knowledge about looking at the patient holistically. And once again, I wouldn't say, well, if everyone just went and learned Pilates, that would help everybody, because it wouldn't. Some people need Pilates because they need more low-level balance control, motor control, learn how to move their body. And then other people just need to lift really heavy crap and do more strength and conditioning. And even some people, depending on their injury, might need different components of each. And I think what's really helpful is, and when I ask this question to people, there's not many people that can answer the question. I'm like, you have to know what you're working towards. What does a healthy body look like for that particular person, you know, that age, that demographic? What should they be able to do? And you know, especially with new grads when they come in, because if you know that, then you can figure everything out because you know where they're starting from. They have limited lumbar spinal flexion. They have weakness. They have poor motor control. And if we know where they should be, so they should have good alignment. That's the osteopath coming out in me. They should have, you know, relatively good flexibility for, you know, their particular age and demographic. They should have good motor control, good proprioception, good balance, adequate strength. And if we know what we're looking for and we can measure it somehow, and there's lots of tech that we can use today to measure that sort of thing, then we can figure out how we're going to get there by working with patients over a period of time. Yeah, and definitely. we can do research to find out, you know, once you know what the deficit is, you can go away and you can figure out what's going to be the best thing for that particular patient. Is it going to be some Pilates motor control exercises? Is it going to be some strength and conditioning type exercises? But it's really hard to get somewhere where you don't know where you're going, what the ideal should be.
Yeah, look, it's almost similar to, I guess, within osteopathy, there's different modalities, right? You've got the direct practitioners, you've got indirect practitioners, you've got craniosacral, you've got biodynamics, you've got kind of all these different tools. And within rehab, you've got all the different tools. You've got the strength work, you've got the conditioning, you've got all the different energy system training, you've got Pilates, you've got, you know, band work and so forth. I guess my question more, or my I guess idea is more revolves around principles of philosophy and exactly what you just said there. Like, what are you trying to get to? What are you aiming towards? And one thing that you should be wary of is breaking the body into little bits and parts. That's not osteopathy, and we don't do that as osteopaths. Yet we see that in the rehab space with osteopaths. They're great at their osteopathy when it comes to treatment, but then when they go into the rehab room, they're giving them an external rotation with a band. I'm like, have you not thought about this, what you're trying to do with the rotator cuff? There's more to a rotator cuff injury than just external rotation, and so we need to just make sure that what we're teaching, it's not so much like, there's going to be some more mainstream stuff out there. I think Pilates is becoming a lot more mainstream now, but definitely the strength work is quite mainstream already.
Yeah.
And you're going to have the primal movement stuff that's there, and I guess you can teach a bit of that. But just like what we do in osteopathy, we teach some of the mainstream techniques that most osteopaths use, and then people go out and do their own work. But as long as the philosophy is there within rehab, as long as we teach people how to apply rehab with that osteopathic mindset, I think we're going to be in a better position moving forward than some of the other professions that have already chopped up the body into little different bits and pieces. And I guess that's the key takeaway from this little bit of our conversation, Damian, is that we have to be quite diligent in making sure that that doesn't happen, that we don't get into that mindset of just isolating different body parts and blaming patients because this is weak and that's strong and all that kind of stuff. But okay, so look, I want to move on from this particular topic, and it's been interesting. We could talk about this probably for a whole nother episode. But I want to move on, I guess, back to your practice. You were doing Premier Sports and Spinal. When did it become evident to you that you wanted to expand into more clinics?
Yeah, it was always the intention. So I think maybe after having the Fitzroy North Clinic, maybe for 2 years or 3 years, I branched out and started a second one, 2 suburbs away. So in a place called Thornbury, like pretty close. And again, it was very strategic because there wasn't, many osteopaths, physios, or chiros in that particular area. And so it took me a while to find the right place, and then started the second one. And then the third one probably came, again, it was very strategic, but it took me a lot longer to find the right building at the right price. So I think that one took me maybe 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years to get the third one in Brunswick. And again, it was the same thing, like in that particular area. And the thing, which is probably the same for most inner cities, people don't like traveling. So 2 suburbs is like a million miles away. Whereas out in the country, people will travel for half an hour. But in a city, I knew that the businesses were far enough apart that they wouldn't compete against each other. But also, I wasn't driving hours backwards and forwards, from one clinic to the other clinic.
Right.
And there was also a great opportunity. So, Brunswick, when I was at university, that's where all the students lived because it was cheap. Now, it's very different. The students have been forced out to live in other areas because it's where all the professionals live. So they were all great opportunities to start clinics at a time where there wasn't a lot of competition.
Okay, and so were these next 2 clinics that you opened, were they of similar nature? Were they sports and spinal? Were they right? Yep. So they were like branches or franchises, I guess, of what you already done. So it was a kind of like a just copy and paste kind of thing that you did, right? And when did you expand into, I guess, different clinics with different emphasis on different things like TMJ and headaches and so forth? When did that happen?
I think this is where the knowledge of kind of marketing and strategy comes into it. So at the start, we started to see sort of headache and migraine patients, and most clinics have headache and migraine patients coming in. And for a number of reasons, we really saw an opportunity to tap into the more chronic and complex ones. And what I knew at that time was that they're not going to come to Premier Sports and Spinal Medicine for headache and migraine treatment. So we decided to create a brand that was specialized on headache and migraine treatment. And we called it Melbourne Headache Solutions. And we had a completely different marketing and brand strategy for that because we knew the clientele were different. And that worked very well for us. We've done it with a few other things like the Health Collective. We focus more on complementary health, so acupuncture, Chinese medicine, speech pathology. We've done it with Premier Pilates and Melbourne TMJ Solutions as well.
Right.
So, and it was like there's been a number of clinics that have also done the same thing, where they've kind of branded an offshoot where they've specialized in a particular type of service.
Yeah. And I guess when did you move away from the contractor model and have more of, I mean, you probably do a hybrid at the moment. Is that correct? Or are you fully?
It's all employee.
Right. So when did that happen? When did that go off in your head to kind of go, you know what, I need to have more control over what I do, so I'm moving over to an employee model?
Yeah. So it was interesting because maybe after about 3 years, I hired my first physio. And employment was more common for physios then. And basically, for me to hire a physio, I had to employ them. No one was going to take a job with an osteopath under a contractor model. And so I always knew, I was committed to having a multidisciplinary clinic with osteo, physio, Pilates. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. Got some guidance from other people within the industry. And I guess that helped me to formulate a contract and that sort of thing. So I went into it with confidence. And market research, again, is quite important. So you know the expectations of the market. And over time, what I realized was there was a really different mentality between an employee and an independent contractor or a subcontractor on a percentage. And I saw many more benefits with an employee model for both parties compared to the subcontractor model, including elements of control and direction.
Yeah.
And learning from Gibbons and TN having incredibly high standards, that was easier having employees.
Okay.
Much easier. The other problem with the subcontractor model was people were on 50, and just like me when I was younger, it's like I always want a higher percentage. And it was just impossible to keep up with the demands. Also, there's increasing pressure from the government, the tax office, to have less subcontractors and have more employees for whatever political reasons. I'm not going to go into that. But there's more pressure on small businesses and large businesses to have employees. So all the little loopholes that we had, in my opinion, are slowly being whittled away, which makes it riskier to have subcontractors compared to having employees.
Okay. And so going back to yourself as a clinician, you were spending some time, you had, from memory from what you've told me, you've had, I think, 3 Premier Sports and Spinal kind of branches going. Were you working at all 3 of them? Were you
I only ever worked at 2.
Right. So you were practicing at 2 clinics. You had a third, and then you opened, I guess, Melbourne Headache Solutions. You opened the Health Collective, and were you still treating at that point? Are you still trying to juggle kind of being a clinician, running the businesses, expanding the businesses, learning about marketing and sales? Tell us about that process and the kind of baptism of fire of going through the pressures of that.
Yeah. I would say the one lesson that it took me too long to learn was trying to juggle too many things meant that I did everything poorly. So when I was treating patients, I was thinking about running the business, the employee that just called in sick, marketing, like everything else. And having 3 clinics and having, a bunch of staff, like 10, 15 practitioners, you can't look after them well. Like, as a practice principal, whether they're subcontractors or employees, you have an obligation to look after them, to lead them, to help them to lift their standards, to help them to have a great career, to have a fulfilling career. And back in the day when I was juggling all of those things, I didn't do that. Okay. The end result was standards within the clinic were incredibly variable because I wasn't there to train them. The churn of patients because of that was much higher. The churn of practitioners was much higher. So back then, I would have been happy if I had a staff member for 2 years.
Right.
Okay. Fast forward to today, I have so many people getting long service leave because they've been with us for 7 years. And I never thought I would have that problem. So it's a really good problem to have, but showing on the balance sheet, financially, it's like, that's tough.
It is tough,
but I would much rather have that problem with having amazing staff that feel fulfilled. They've got a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging. They love working there and will probably continue to work there for years.
Right. Are you finding that when you do have somebody who's a great practitioner, who's a good clinician, they start off as an employee, they grow, within 3-4 years, are they harder to hold on to? Do they want to go out and do their own thing? Have you found that ultimately that people that know, people aren't silly. They know how to do mathematics. They can kind of break down their salary, even with the bonuses, into a more of an hourly rate. And they kind of know what they're worth. And so once people figure out that they can do this, do you find that they leave because they want to go out on their own, or they leave because they're not happy being employees?
Some certainly do leave and they go and set up their own clinic, for sure. And, people are on their own journey. And if that's what they want to do, and there's been plenty where I've actually helped them to set up their business.
Yeah.
They call me for advice. The one thing that I ask is that they respect the restraint of trade clause. Okay. And knock on wood, no one's ever set up next door.
Yeah.
And they also give ample notice. And I let them know, like, if you give me 1 month's notice, like, that's not enough time to find a replacement. So you throw me in the deep end.
I don't think I've discussed this with any practitioner who said that they wouldn't be happy to help somebody that's done the right thing by them.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
2 things I ask. 1, respect the restraint of trade clause. Don't open up next door. And, if you're planning on starting your own business, like, tell me.
Yeah, just leave the right way.
I will help you to do it more successfully if you just try to figure it out on your own. And thankfully, like, they've all done the right thing.
Yeah.
And I've been happy to support them. One thing that served me really well is knowing that nothing is forever. Everyone is going to move on.
Yeah. It helps you to help them too. Like, it grows your reputation by having people out there that said, I worked with Damian and Damian really helped me. And just like you've been on the podcast and talked about the people that helped you grow in those early years, people will go on to say how good you were to them later on. And that's always going to grow your brand, I guess. So this is what new graduates and young practitioners out there need to understand. It's in our best interests as, say, more experienced osteopaths to help you become good practitioners because it reflects well on us.
Yeah.
And so we aim for that. Like, you'd be a kind of a certain narcissist or psychopathic practitioner to not want to have the best thing for the people that have come through your clinic. And as long as they go through the right way and they leave the right way and they're not looking at harming your business on the way out, then there's no reason why. I haven't met any practitioner that wouldn't help another practitioner out. That's one thing I'm really proud of our profession for. I think we're really good that way. And because that's one of the things that's helped us, because we're still tiny compared to the other health professions. It's like we still kind of see each other as this small group of people that kind of know each other. All right. And so, tell me a bit about the Health Collective. Is that something that you leasing space there for people that just want to lease a space, and you help them, I guess, market and grow their own individual kind of practices from that?
Yeah, it's really exciting project that we're doing where we because you mentioned this right at the start. A lot of healthcare practitioners are really great clinically, but and they might have spent 4 or 5 years learning those skills, but they don't really have any business skills or not to the same level. And often they're seeing, well, Sammy's out there, he's got his clinic and could give him 50 or 60 or 70% of my earnings, or I could go do it myself. And very quickly they realize that running a business is hard, especially in inner city, suburban areas. Like, it's hard, it's competitive.
Yeah.
And so the Health Collective solves the two biggest problems. One, we've got premium consulting suites that they can lease. And we also give them business support. So everything they need to grow and scale their business, based on my 20 years of experience, they get access to that. A case example, we've got a Chinese medicine practitioner who in 3 months has gone from 0 patients to probably 40 patients per week.
Great.
Chinese medicine practitioners, on average, probably take 15 years to get any sort of business that's sustainable. And one of the reasons that I'm doing this is because so many people leave the profession because they can't make it work, either as an employee, a subcontractor, or as a business person.
Yeah.
And there's so much talent that's moving on, leaving the profession. And it's not just osteopathy, but physiotherapy, podiatry, Chinese medicine. And it's really, really sad to see that it's just because they haven't acquired the skills yet that's going to allow them to run a successful practice and give them everything that they want, the lifestyle that they want, the ideal clients that they want, and whatever that might be. It might be 10 patients per week, or it might be 50, 60, 70 patients per week.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't teach you the clinical skills. Like, I presume that you've got that.
Yeah.
But if you're a confident practitioner, then all you need to do is follow a system. Okay? Learn how to implement it and commit to it 100%, and you can grow your practice incredibly fast.
Yeah. I will get to that, and I want to discuss marketing and sales, I guess, specifically within the osteopathic profession. So I'll get to that. But I want to know a bit about your background in marketing and sales. When did you really start to go, you know what, this is something that I really want to learn about and be able to do really well? When did that start for you?
That would have started early on. I think, as you said, like when Google Ads came out, like maybe even before that, I was doing SEO. Yeah. And one of the lessons I've learned, it took me a long time to learn that lesson, is that learning to do something on your own is the hardest and most expensive way to do it. And I did that, I reckon, for probably close to 10 years.
Right.
So I was just adamant that I could do everything myself and figure it out.
So what would you have done differently, Damian? I mean, you seem like that you want to know how to do it. So if somebody wants to know how to do it, what would be the best course of action to kind of, I guess, take a shortcut? Instead of making 1,000 mistakes, what's the best way to kind of get yourself there, I guess, without spending all the time and heartache and effort and money that you did learning it yourself?
Yeah. With most things, all the information that you need is out there. So you can just go on the internet, you can follow particular people, like for marketing, Neil Patel. But the challenge is knowing how to implement that in your business successfully. That's always the challenge. So everything costs time or money or both. So you can spend the time to go and learn it and then figure out how to apply it to your unique business and unique situation. Or you can pay somebody to do that for you.
Or I guess the third option, though, you could pay somebody to teach you how to do it as well, right?
Yep, 100%.
You know, like, because you learned it on your own by kind of just going out there, learning some stuff, A/B testing. I'll test this out, I'll test that out. That didn't work. Lost a bit of money here, made a bit of money there. You know, but I guess you could work with a coach that would help you do that a lot quicker, right? Would that be an advice you can give people?
Yep. I think it's understanding what you're trying to achieve in your business. I always go back to, if you know where you are right now, and you know where you want to get to, okay, then it's much easier to figure out the path there. And not everyone wants to have, 3 clinics or 1 clinic with 5 employees. There's lots of people that just want to have a private practice, a solo practice, okay? And there's different strategies for, different desires and goals and exactly where you are on that journey. But 100%, if you want to shortcut it and spend less time and less money and get faster return, then reaching out to someone that's got experience in that field is the best thing that you can do. And I will share with you my $50,000 lesson that I learned from engaging two digital marketing companies.
Yeah.
So for a long time, I figured it out myself. I shared that story. So after I came home from seeing 15, 20 patients, out of desire, I wanted to learn SEO and website design and branding and all that sort of thing. I loved it. So I was happy to do it. And as I was getting busier, I'm like, I don't want to keep doing this because it's taking so much of my time. So on recommendation of somebody else, I engaged a digital marketing firm. And as they were doing their work and reporting to me, I'm like noticing things that just I wouldn't do and wouldn't sit right. And I'd give them feedback and they'll change it. And after 3 months, I'm like, I think I know more than you when it comes to marketing a healthcare practice. And also the results that you promised weren't there.
Give me an example. Give me an example, Damian, of what didn't sit well with you. Give me just one little example that.
So one, like, this is something that marketing companies will do all the time. They'll give you vanity metrics.
Okay.
So how many clicks, cost per click, how many impressions, look how pretty it is. And it's all sort of cloak and daggers quite type stuff. And at the end of the day, I'm like, well, I'm paying you like a retainer of $5,000 a month. And I don't have any patients yet. And I'm like, and the work, I'm correcting your work and telling you what you should be doing to like different language, like the language that they were using wouldn't resonate with our audience. And this is the thing. Marketing agencies don't understand healthcare. So they apply the same principles for what they might do with McDonald's and Coke to people searching out an allied health practice. And if it doesn't resonate with your target audience, then they're not going to care about it. They're not going to buy. They're not going to take the next step. So fired the first one, and then on recommendation, hired a second one. Pretty much the same experience.
Right.
Very little result, and like literally paying $5,000 a month for the best. And as I'm going through the process, I'm like, the good thing was at the end of it, it gave me reassurance that I know 10 times more than these people when it comes to marketing an allied health clinic. At that point, I still didn't want to go back to doing it myself.
Right.
So I recruited a digital marketing specialist to come and work full-time in my clinics. We spent the next year working together. I was sharing my knowledge with her. She was sharing her knowledge with me. And over that time, we just kept refining and refining and refining everything that we were doing in digital marketing. Whereas now I meet with her twice a week, Monday and Friday. She lets me know the plan for the week, and she lets me know the results at the end of the week. And she's got 2 people that support her full-time in that role. And it is because we're just immersed in healthcare private practice marketing.
Yeah.
I coach close to 50 practice owners around the world. We have access to thousands and thousands of points of data where we can see what's working, why it's working, what we need to change to make it work better, what to do at this point in time for this practice that wants rapid growth really, really fast, or this clinic that wants more sustainable growth over a longer period of time.
Yeah, right.
And once again, it's just having that knowledge of what do they need right now, what's the best strategy for them, and being able to execute that effectively.
Right. What made you specifically want to do this? Like, you kept on saying that, oh, okay, I didn't want to do it myself, but it's almost like serendipity kind of just pushed you back into it of doing it yourself, and you eventually teamed up with somebody who you're still teamed up with now by the sounds of things.
Yeah.
What was there an ultimate decision there in your brain? Because I know I go through the same thing. And, you know, it's marketing and sales. And let's talk marketing for a minute because sales is a little bit different. But marketing is such an important part of growing, and not only just growing a business, but keeping a business healthy, right? It's such an important integral part of it that even if you don't want to do it yourself, you should know the numbers. You should be able to sit there and discuss something with somebody and at least know what they're talking to you about. And for that, you need some education. Like, I don't advise any business owner to just hand over their money and go, well, you do it, and I don't want to know about it. I would always advise people to at least know the numbers, just like you're talking to an accountant. If an accountant's talking to you about profit and loss and income and expenses, and you have no idea what they're talking about, that's probably not a good strategy to kind of have to go into. And so, with that framing, I guess I'm going to ask you the question then. What is it that made you? Did you know that this was something that was so integral to your practice growth that you had to get it right? Was that why you went down that path?
Yep. Marketing is simply letting people know that you exist and that you can help them. Now, if you're not doing any marketing, people don't know that you exist. And a lot of clinics rely on word of mouth referrals, and some even discount the use of any other marketing. It's like this: I wear this as a badge of honor, that I don't need to do any marketing, and by inference, I'm so good. And so, what I would say to them is like, and there are many talented osteopaths out there that are like elite level and get amazing results. And I'm like, well, don't you have an obligation to share that with as many people as possible? That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Once again, at Premier Sports Medicine, you know, we believe that we're some of the best in the business. We have incredibly high standards, and we like to think that we get really good results with our patients. So the more people that know about us, the more people that we can help.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I think marketing is, it's so essential from a patient perspective, from a business perspective. And it's not something that people should be shy about doing or think, oh, if you have to market, you're obviously not good. And I've heard people say that on social media, and it's like, maybe they just want to help more people.
Yeah, no, I've heard the same thing. And look, we talked about this earlier as, you know, back in the 80s and the 90s. And, you know, when I started working with an osteopath, you know, it was just yellow pages and a sign. And because they were good, people would just kind of like spread their word like wildfire.
Yeah.
And I guess that worked well in their local community and they got busy. But it's such a different market at the moment that, you know, if you're somebody who has a little bit of an idea about marketing and just branding, you know, you could really elevate your practice quite quickly. You don't need to wait for people to go out because there's more competition now. And I guess if you're waiting on that, you're going to be waiting a while. And so, okay, so you've branched out more.
On that. There's more choice today.
Yeah.
And there's less affinity. There's less loyalty. So back in the day when I was growing up, we had the family dentist that we went to, the family doctor. I don't behave like that today.
Yeah.
In my local area, I have a choice of so many doctors that are amazing. Okay?
Yeah.
And you might have a great experience going to one of them, but 6 months later, when you need somebody again, they're most likely going to go through the same buying process of, who am I going to go to? A lot of practitioners think that if I just do a good job, they're always going to come back and see me. And once again, yes, true. 20 years ago, when there was less choice and less loyalty, fast forward to today, all it takes is to see someone on social media, like doing something different, or for a friend or family member to go, oh, you should go see my chiro osteo. And they're like, okay. and they've
Yeah.
gone, and they've
Yeah.
gone somewhere else. Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about now marketing within the specific realm of, I guess, the osteopathic profession. Um, how are we doing as a profession? I mean, I know you mentioned that you see it on social media circles where some osteopaths kind of regard the word of mouth referrals as some kind of badge of honor, that they don't need marketing. But do you think we do a good job, or do you think we need to do better at, I guess, learning about marketing and utilizing marketing better as a profession? I mean, there's other healthcare It's hard because you don't have much to compare it to. But I guess if you're going to compare yourself to the physios and the chiropractors out there, do you think that we're doing a good job for the size of the profession that we're at?
Yep. I think from a local clinic level, they're covering the basics really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
Professional websites, good social media presence, like Google reviews and that sort of thing, reputation management, all the basics are covered really well. I think the challenge is standing out from the crowd,
Okay.
having a unique value proposition, which is just marketing talk for why should people choose you over somebody else? And everything we do, this is not just osteopaths, but it's like, I've seen what this person is doing on Instagram, so I'm going to copy them. Or I've seen something nice on this website, it looks prettier, so I'm going to copy that.
Yeah.
And there's no real strategy behind it. And there's no understanding what is unique to me, what's the value that I'm going to bring to the client, and how can I help the patient to make a better decision.
Yeah.
Yep. And so this all comes under the umbrella of kind of branding. And if you get that right, then you get more of your ideal clients coming into the clinic. So obviously in Melbourne Headache Solutions, we only have people with headache, migraine, and concussion that come into the clinic. They are our ideal clients that come into the clinic because we understand who they are, what they need, and we've got our branding associated with that. When it comes to an osteopathic clinic, I guess the question that I would ask people, if people went to your website, would they know kind of what you stand for, what your values are, what they're going to get? Because if it's just osteopathy, there's another 10 people next to you on Google Ads, in Google Maps, on the first page. And unless something stands out and resonates with them, the chances of them choosing you is quite low.
Yeah. Do you think that something can be done on a professional level? I know when we talk about associations and things like that, do you think that we could do some kind of, I guess, we're still a small profession. In some ways that really helps us because we can get good coverage across the entire profession and we can really have it grow from the base up. But I've thought about this and having some kind of business and marketing school for, I guess, for osteopaths that might be engaged by the association that works to kind of help, osteopaths learn about marketing and not just learn about it from a superficial point of view, actually nuts and bolts and how to apply it and how to apply it well. And then once they learn about it, if they want to then go and spend more money with an agency or with a specific expert, then they can, but at least to a point where they can put some Google ads out there, put some social media ads out there, really stand out in the crowd. Do you think that's a worthwhile thing to kind of look at, or is it something that should be left up to the individual?
I would say not only marketing, but business fundamentals. Even things like knowing your numbers, what are important numbers to know for your practice, percentages, profit and loss statement. If you're going to run a business, like the more that you can know in that area, the more successful you're going to be. And not only success, but be able to do it with less stress.
Yep.
So for me, that would be the one thing that I could change, because I know in the first 10 years, I did it all by myself without asking for any help. And then at some point, I got a business coach and my life changed. It changed so dramatically. And I was like, if only I had done this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I might have had the same success, but I would have had much less stress.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like the toll that took personally and on my family was massive. And if I could have had that sort of guidance and support, I probably would have had better success, but also much less stress along the way.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yes, marketing would be helpful. Business fundamentals would be helpful. I know our association has like a HR hotline, which I haven't personally used it, but I believe that's incredibly valuable. So along the same lines, the more guidance and support that we can give to business owners to help them run successfully stress-free businesses would be great.
And I guess what I'm talking about is something really concrete, not just guidance and support, but an actual course that they can do, like something they can tap into, like where they could, where maybe the association runs a 6 monthly course and utilizes somebody like yourself, says, hey, Damian, they might come to you and say, hey, Damian, like you're an expert at this, you've done it across multiple clinics, you've got proven track record. Why don't you take what you know, put it into a course, run it for our members, we'll remunerate you in a certain way. You're already connected to the profession and you have an affinity for it. So it's not like you're not going to want to do it. And I would like to see that space. We have a lot of superstars in our profession, people that are really good at certain niches that they're into. And I don't think we bring them in enough. I don't think we bring them into the fold. And if we do, we kind of just scratch the surface with them. We don't really, get them to sink their teeth into something and have them run with the ball. But I'd like to see that happen a little bit more. What I do want to ask you is, I want to give you a little case study and see if you can help people that way. Let's say I'm somebody who's been working with somebody for, I'm a graduate. I've worked now for about 3 or 4 years. I'm ready to start my own clinic. And you mentioned this because you looked around and every time you wanted to open up a new branch, you kind of did some market research. What are some of the things that I need to know about when I'm looking at opening up a location? Like, what are some, 3 points that I would look at opening a new clinic?
I would say demographic, density, and then location of the actual premises. And so density is that you need to make sure that you've got enough people in the local area that want your service.
Okay. And
you that may or may not be relative to the amount of competition in that particular area. There's definitely some markets that are going to be more saturated than others. And certainly, I'd say part of the rapid success that we had with each of our clinics was because it was an untapped market.
Okay.
I think it would be very different if we were to open the clinics today in the same location because there's a lot more competition there. Right.
Okay. So now I've done what you've told me to. We've set up the clinic. I want to look at my marketing strategy. What are some of the key essentials that I need to get right from the start? Like, what are some things that you would advise somebody who's just opened their clinic, maybe doesn't have a whole bunch of money to spend, but wants to get the basics right? What are they do? What are they going to do?
If you wanted to scale your business fast, paid ads on social media is the only way to do it.
Right. And that includes Google?
No.
Right.
So, I'm going to go through a little bit of marketing speak here.
Okay.
We've got bottom of funnel. So we've got a marketing funnel that's separated top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. And your bottom of funnel are those people that are ready to buy now.
Yeah.
And these are the people that go to Google and go, Osteopath in Fitzroy North.
Right. So let's explain a funnel first of all, so people understand.
A
funnel exactly what it looks like. It's like a funnel, and the top of it is big, so it can catch a lot of people. And as people go through the funnel, it gets narrower and narrower. And by the time they get out, it's quite a narrow exit, and they're ready to buy. They're ready to purchase.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Now, those people that are ready to purchase at bottom of funnel is probably 3 to 5% of everybody that could use your service.
Okay.
And if you're only targeting those people, it's going to be slow and hard to get sufficient volume coming into your clinic, especially with all the competition. Yep. Now we're going to go all the way up to the top. We've got top of funnel, which is people that aren't even aware they have a problem.
Okay.
So osteopaths, we might be talking a back issue. Okay, so they might wake up in the morning, they feel stiff and sore, but they go, oh, it's normal, it's not a problem. And they're not looking for a solution. Okay. Middle of funnel is where we're going to tap into. And so let's say it's 50% of the population. And these are people that know they have a problem. So they wake up in the morning and they don't feel as good as what they know they could be. But they're unsure of exactly what the right path is. And we know there's a lot of people, if you go, I don't know, to a cafe and you're speaking to somebody and you mention you're an osteopath, they go, oh yeah, I have back pain, headaches. Everyone you speak to has a problem. Are they taking action on it right now? Generally not. There's only a very small percentage that are taking action right now. So all these people in the middle here, they're in like the pre-contemplation phase. I know I've got a problem. I should do something about it. And within that, you have some people at different levels of awareness. So they don't even know osteopaths exist, or they're like, should I go to this osteopath or that osteopath? I can't decide, so I'm not doing anything. Now, all of these people live on social media because everybody lives on social media. And these people are not going to Google and searching for an osteopath in Fitzroy North.
Right. They're just browsing their social media.
They're watching funny cat videos on Facebook. Okay. So if we can get in front of them with our unique value proposition that resonates with them, okay, they are much more likely to take action at some point.
Right.
Yep. And now we call it a funnel and awareness stages because today people need about 10 to 13 touch points before they'll do business with you.
Okay.
Going back pre-COVID, it was 7 to 10 touch points.
Yeah, wow.
Okay, which a touch point for the audience is exposure or interactions to your business. So they might see you on Google, they see your Instagram post, they check your reviews out, they get an email from you, somebody talks about you at the cafe.
Right.
Used to be 7 to 10, now it's 10 to 13.
Okay.
Now, this is important because you can warm your audience up on social media. They can see a video of you or an image of your clinic or you talking about back pain or feeling stiff when you wake up in the morning, and they don't take action, but they've had an exposure. Or they go to your website and check you out, they stalk your Instagram, and they go, oh, this is cool. But they still don't take action. And then one day they woke up and they've now got pain and they can't put their shoes on. So now they're Googling osteopath in Fitzroy North. Who do you think they're going to choose? The clinic that they've had interaction with or the clinic that they don't know?
Right.
Yep. They're going to choose the clinic that they know, like, and trust more than the one that they don't. Now, if you want to make this more powerful, then you might have some sort of offer to entice people to make a decision more quickly. Okay. Some practices don't like to have an offer. Okay. They prefer to not do that. And there's no right or wrong, but there's definitely one that's more effective in getting people to take action at a higher rate to fill your books quicker compared to the other one.
Yeah, okay. So, okay, let's, I guess I don't want to get too, I'm really grateful that you explained that because I think that's going to be a good base to kind of tell us then if you want to, I guess, you just mentioned that if you want to grow your clinic fast, do paid social media ads. And I guess maybe put some of your budget aside for that. If you don't have that large budget for it, what are some of the essentials? Things like website and branding, and I guess having a presence there. And is that, I mean, talk to us more about maybe an overall strategy rather than just a specific targeted ad.
If you didn't have a big budget and you've got the time.
Hello everyone, just a quick break to give you some information on where to best find me. The first place is the private Facebook group called the Successful Practitioner Pathway. I've set up this private group as a place where practitioners can go and get tips and advice on how to best accelerate their practice and improve their clinical practice skills. The second place to find me is at successinpractice.net. That is where the Success in Practice signature program is housed. You can find more information about me and how I can best help you achieve success in your practice. So the two best places, the private Facebook group, the Successful Practitioner Pathway, and successinpractice.net. I will link to both those places in the show notes, so for more information, please see the show notes. Now, enjoy and back to the show.
I would spend time building relationships with people in the local community.
Okay. Great.
Yep. It doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
And it's good because you're doing what you love. You're talking about osteopathy and that sort of thing. You can go to GPs, you can go to gyms, you can go to yoga studios, all those things we spoke about. And what you need to do is go and give value without any expectation in return. You need to build trust and reputation within the community.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you've got plenty of time. You can do that once or twice a day.
So tell us, how do you give value? I mean, I know how to give value, but tell the audience, how would you give value? I mean, if you're a new graduate and you're going to the local yoga studio, what's an example of me giving them value?
Yep. Choose something that you're passionate about and you're interested in. So for me, I was an athlete. I would go to gyms and I'll do injury screenings.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I gave to them of value was I would assess and diagnose their complaint.
Okay.
And then I would have an offer for them to come into the clinic.
Yeah.
So what I knew is if I got to speak to them and give them some value and they liked and trusted me, they would become a client.
Okay. And in terms of value for the actual business owner, I mean, this is more B2B marketing, right? You're a business, you're going to another business, it might be a yoga studio or a gym, and you're talking to the trainer or the owner of the gym or the actual yoga instructor. And I guess part of giving them value is to make them look good in front of their people, right? So that's how you would give them value. It's not so much about what you want. You've got to find out what they want and how you can help them achieve that. And if you do that, then the owner of the yoga studio will just infer their own authority because they've already got the business. The people are already going to see them at the yoga studio. So they have some authority with this person. Yeah. If they then go, hey, go and see Damian, he's fantastic. They're taking that authority and they're inferring it onto you. And when that patient comes in to see you, they're already hot. They're good and they're primed to go. Yep. So yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the one thing that I did, because when I went to the business owner or the PT, I knew they weren't going to refer clients to me unless they knew what I could do. So I would just say to them, look, for you the first time, I'm a small business. I'm just getting started. You don't know anything about me. The best way to show you how good I am is for you to come into the clinic complimentary.
Yeah.
Yep. And they would come in. And the best thing about this was, like, number one, I was confident in my ability. Number two, the fact that I did something for them, when they left the clinic, and they felt better, they thought they had a good outcome, they have this sense of that they owe me. Yeah. It wasn't that I told them that they owed me anything. I never said anything like that. But they had this sense that they now wanted to help me out. So now I had a rep 24/7 in the gym speaking to people saying, oh, your shoulder's still a problem. You need to go see Damian.
Yeah.
I saw him. He was great. I don't know exactly what they said, but I'm presuming it was something along those lines.
Yeah. And one thing I've learned over the years, it's always better to do free than to discount. Would you agree with that?
It depends.
You know, like if I'm talking to somebody like a trainer, like what you just said, I'd always say, look, you know, I'll give them a bunch of complimentary treatments, because people, when you give them a discount, they always expect that discount forever. Whereas if you give them something that's complimentary and you say, look, I'm going to give you the next, 10 visits complimentary. I mean, once you've got them, they'll come. You might not see them for 6 months, but then they'll come back in 6 months and they'll pay for your service, just because they appreciate it. But if you give them a discount and then all of a sudden you take that discount away, it's like something they've lost.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So in this situation, what worked for me was giving it complimentary at the start.
Yeah.
And like, I would have some personal trainers that would call me on behalf of the client. And they're like, I need to make an appointment for Jerry. He's been really stubborn, but he needs to come and see you. Here's the phone, speak to him.
Yeah.
Okay. For those businesses, they love working with healthcare professionals. Like, because it makes them look good. It helps to keep their clients come into the gym, come into the yoga studio. It adds value in terms of what the business is offering. It's such an easy thing to do. 100% if I was starting again and I had no money, this is the one thing that I would do. If I had some money, I would spend it on marketing and really understand how to do that well and leverage social media and have an offer to entice people in.
Okay. And we always forget the bartering thing too. I mean, I take my kids to a guy that I treat. He's an MMA coach, and my kids love doing MMA. And I barter with him, you know, whenever he's got to come in, and I just do a complimentary for him, and he doesn't charge my children when they go and learn MMA. It's and by doing that, you help each other out, and it's like your business buddies. And I guess, you know, when you get ready to refer someone, you refer them to your buddy.
Totally.
You know, and so when he's got people in his gym that need treatment, they go, just go and see Sammy. And I've 20x'd my bartering with him. It's not like I've lost money, you know. And so that's always a good strategy too.
Relationship building is so important. And when you're running a business, building long-term sustainable relationships where everybody wins is what builds you a great business. Whether it's business to business or whether it's with patients, it's super, super important.
Right. Okay. So look, I guess looking forward, thank you for doing that. Looking forward, clinically, you're still practicing at the moment? Are you clinically still treating patients?
I generally don't see patients. There's some patients that I see. They're probably special cases that are referred to me. Chronically complex cases that have generally had failed treatment elsewhere.
Okay. And I guess, are you spending some time doing mentoring? Do you mentor, I guess, people that work with you?
Yeah, and 100%. Most of my time is spent mentoring health professionals, either clinicians, being people that work within my business, or other business owners. So I mentor about 50 clinic owners around the world, and we help them with everything to do with running a successful private practice. Marketing, patient enrollment, operations, finance.
Once you have a patient that's come to see you, you're sitting in that initial consultation. What's the best advice you can give people, especially early career graduates, early career osteopaths? What's your best advice you can give them to make sure that, I guess, they capitalize on that first consultation? I mean, I've never met a patient that only ever needed that first consultation. You know, most people need multiple sessions to get better. And so knowing that, what's the best thing I can do as an early career osteopath to make sure that I offer the best to my patients and give them the proper service that they're after?
I could talk about this for a very long time, and I've actually developed a training called the Collaborative Consult that is designed to really shake up how we do the initial consult. And I was just doing a training session today. The way we're taught to do an initial consult hasn't changed in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and it's based on the medical model.
Okay.
Which doesn't really take into account everything that we know today about helping patients in pain. Patient-centered care, motivational interviewing, and it's really just trying to understand the patient on a deeper level, like why they're really here. And it's generally not because they're in pain, it's because that pain is stopping them from doing something. Okay?
Correct, yeah.
If I had back pain and I could still interact and play with my kids, I've got 2 kids aged 11 and 16, and I'm really, really active with them. Every day we go to the park, we play netball, football, whatever. Now, if I have pain but I can do that, I'm not taking action. But as soon as I can't do that, I'm distressed and I'm seeking answers. Now, unfortunately, at university, as amazing as what our education is and that sort of thing, it's very pain-centered. And if that's our objective, so remember, we're always starting with the end in mind. We understand where the patient is now and where they want to get to. If we're pain-focused and all we do is treat pain, we're going to have very limited outcomes with our patients. Okay? So we need to develop our motivational interviewing skills and understand truly what patient-centered care is, which is spending time to understand the patient, what's brought them in, also their values, their beliefs, and what's important to them. And if you can spend 5 minutes talking to them about that, okay, that will pretty quickly reveal to you everything they're worried about when it comes to their particular condition, about their back pain, what's important to them, what outcome that they want to get. Okay, and it's a skill to learn because it involves active listening, open-ended questions, and it's completely different to site, quality, intensity, radiation, referral, what's your past medical history. Like, that's all very clinical. Okay, the patient-centered stuff is very non-clinical. It's very emotional, and we make buying decisions with the emotional part of our brain. And in general, the way we've been taught to run a clinical consult is just run a clinical consult without taking into consideration the emotional, the psychological aspects, which is so important for the patient.
Yeah, definitely. And so I guess when a early career osteopath is setting up, I guess, the template of their history, would you advise them that they actually put some of those questions in there that are a bit more open-ended,
100%.
that look at what the patient is generally wants from the actual treatment, or what outcome are they trying to achieve?
Yeah.
And I guess you're trying to sell that outcome. You're not selling the treatment, right? Like, patients don't care about what you're going to do. They just care about how you're going to make them feel.
Yeah.
And once you know that, then getting them to come back and see you weekly for 4 weeks, or twice a week for 3 weeks, or whatever it is, it becomes less of a challenge. It's not really a challenge anymore, is it?
Yeah. Yeah. Something that I teach, like everyone that works for me and people that I work with, is that we want to give our patients an appropriate management plan. Once we understand those 2 points, where they are and where they want to go to, and we want to be able to communicate this effectively to the patient in a way that they understand and they eventually love the plan, whether it's 2 sessions or if they have a chronic and complex condition, like, you need to work with them for 12 weeks or more. And having the confidence in yourself that you can communicate that effectively to the patient in such a way that they're like, I understand that. And I'm committed to the plan. Because getting somebody halfway through the plan is not success.
No.
If people drop out of care and they get a little bit of pain relief, or the pain disappears, but then the problem comes back again in the future, that's not a good outcome.
No. And I guess, is that a physical plan that you guys, that you have your people do, right?
Yep.
And it becomes a lot easier to, I guess, when something's more tangible, it's in front of you. Patients like that. It's something they can actually hold and feel, and it makes the buy-in a bit easier. So that's important.
A lot of practitioners believe that patients are not interested in preventative care or correcting the problem. They only want pain relief. And that's because they base their consultation just on the clinical components and they're pain focused themselves. But when you're adding motivational interviewing and patient-centered care, patients make better choices.
Yeah, well, even modern pain science is really catching up to us in that sense, because we know that, if we're looking at the signals to the brain with pain's usually the last thing that comes on when a person has a problem, and the first thing that disappears. And so it doesn't mean that management, isn't required after the pain's gone. And that's not something that we've just made up out of thin air. There's physiology and there's neuroscience behind that. And once you understand that, the decision for you to actually make the recommendation that you're going to make is a scientific, physiological decision. It's not some weird number you pluck out of the sky, And so it's important for people to know that. Okay, so look, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but looking forward into the future of osteopathy, I guess, tell us what you'd like to see happen in the profession. What would you like to see change? I'm going to take it back to this, and you said that earlier in our discussion, you said that the standards that Gibbons and TN set for you was very high. you mentioned that I guess you're not seeing that standard being upheld at the moment and you see a lot of graduates. I mean, you run 4 busy practice or 5 busy practices, I think, and you're seeing what's coming out now. Do you think that the quality what's happened? What do you think? Explore this for me a bit, Damian. What do you think's happened in the last maybe 12 years? I want to put COVID aside because I realised COVID was a challenge. I realised that COVID presented a problem in terms of contact hours. COVID's not around anymore. There's no reason why we can't go back to having more contact hours. And even before COVID, I think we started to see a little bit of a decline there. What do you think's happened, mate? What do you think's going on there?
To be honest, I'm not sure.
Did you see it? Did you see a trend kind of happening post, say, 2010, 11, 12? Was that something that you saw in practitioners? And did you ever say anything about it? Like, did you talk to your fellow colleagues that you graduated with that are running businesses and going, what's going on? Like, you know, did you mention anything to the association did you ring up people at the university at VU and say, hey, what's going on? Did you ever explore that?
It was certainly something colleagues noticed over time as well. So they noticed this trend. And I guess when it's kind of slow, it's and not abrupt, you kind of you don't really take notice of it until you look back and you kind of go, oh, between there and there, there's actually there's a bit of a gap.
Yeah.
And I think it all comes down to the way the universities, like if you have less contact time, the thing that I valued the most was the fact that we were in the clinic and we had hands-on people all the time.
Yeah.
Like students were students. And on the weekend, we had portable treatment tables and we were locked up and we were studying together and we put the principles in practice.
Yeah, right.
And I think seems to be some challenges with that happening in the university system today.
Right. And so, go
like
ahead.
For me is I can control what I can control. So students coming into my clinic, if I can recognize what's working really well for them and where they need to be upskilled, I can control for that. And I've been doing it for such a long period of time that we can kind of fast track them in a pretty short period of time. Me trying to control associations and institutions.
Yeah.
Yes, I can give them my input, and many people have, but I'm not sure they've taken that advice.
Right.
So I can't control that. I focus on what I can control, which is people that work with me or choose to engage me as a business coach.
Yeah, right. Great. And I guess also we don't want to, there's an element to it where universities obviously have their part to play, but I guess it always has to come back to the individual responsibility as well. Like osteopathy, I mean, you got to go chasing osteopathy. It's not just going to be handed to you on a silver platter. Yep. You know, you got to go looking for it. And I had a conversation with one of the program directors on the sidelines of the recent Osteopathy Australia convocation. And they mentioned to me that, you know, students just aren't like that. They would run, I guess, seminars where they would get experienced practitioners to come in and they'd get 3 or 4 people turning up. Whereas in your day and my day, you know, you'd have a packed house of 30 students there, 40 students there, ready to watch. And so you've got to go chasing it. You know, it's not going to be handed to you. And there's plenty of people out there like Damian and quite experienced practitioners that are happy to help, especially clinically, right? Especially clinically. I mean, you do your business and marketing stuff, and I'm sure there's things that you're well entitled to charge money for. But clinically speaking, if someone picks up the phone and says, "Hey, Damian, I've got this case," you're more than happy to have a 5-10 minute chat with them and give them some direction. Yeah. I don't think anybody wouldn't do that. And so I guess that's the advice for people out there that want to control situations. Like Damian just said, he can control what he can control, and he can't control what universities do. If you're a student or a new grad and you want to control your situation, go looking for it. It's out there for you. It's not, no one's hiding it from you.
Yep.
And I guess, yeah, that's important. And I guess going back to my question now for you then, what would you like to see happen in the future over the next 10 years? Is there some kind of direction you'd like to see the profession move into?
The I think osteopathy fundamentally is an amazing skill to learn. And I still think the graduates that are coming out are like, they're fantastic. They have great skills and they need that commitment to keep working on them. The
Right.
biggest challenge is what I was touching on before, is not knowing how to manage patients.
Yeah.
So coming out of university and not knowing how to do a treatment plan,
Yeah.
I think, like, how can you have success with the patient if you don't know how to plan for their success? And so this is one of the reasons that I've done the collaborative consult training, is because I break all of this down. If you combine the clinical skills that you've learnt coming out of university with understanding sort of patient psychology, behavioral science, why people make buying decisions, understand motivational interviewing, and you learn to apply this skillfully, you don't have problems in private practice with patients.
Yeah.
Like, they listen to your advice.
Yeah. Great.
When you say come back and see me twice a week for 2 weeks, they do that because you've taken the time to understand them and their problem and also their goals, and they feel really good about this. They can trust you as a practitioner. When you just rely on the clinical component, those feelings don't happen. So they say yes, but then they bail as soon as they can. Like, once the pain has diminished or disappeared, they're like, okay, thanks. You know, my job here is done. If you can master that aspect of the consultation, like the soft skills that they call them, then you'll have more word of mouth referrals, more patients going through the entire treatment plan, whatever it is. Okay. Getting really, really good outcomes.
And I guess short of universities taking that, whatever you're teaching, and making that part of their curriculum, what would you like to see happen in the profession to make people more aware of that? Like, what can we do as a profession to, I guess, make and put an emphasis onto that? Because I don't think there's enough emphasis on that. You know, we don't look at the behaviour of a patient rather than just the actual clinical aspect of it. What can we do as a profession to change things around?
Once again, I'm really about individual responsibility.
Yeah.
Universities have their place, associations have their place, but at the end of the day, if there's deficits in your learning, yes, you can say, look, university didn't teach me that, but now it's your responsibility. If you know that there's more that you can learn, you're going to have to seek it out.
Yeah.
Find someone to shortcut that path for you. Find a mentor that will support you.
Yeah.
Go online, figure stuff out. Okay. You have to take individual responsibility for solving that aspect.
Yeah.
And part of that is recognizing that if you're feeling frustrated because patients aren't listening to you, that perhaps there's a skill set that you haven't learned.
Yeah.
And all that has to happen is that you have to recognize that and go, well, now I'm going to learn it. Just like dry needling, they don't teach that at university, I think.
Yeah.
So if you want to do that, you need to go do a course on that. And you know the benefits of doing that. Rehab, they don't teach that. So you need to go do a course to learn how to do that.
Yeah, great.
Motivational interviewing, how to do a consult really well. Okay, so patients buy into the treatment plan that you recommend to them. If you don't know how to do that, then that would be the one thing that I would be doing.
Great. All great advice there, Damian. Mate, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. I know we've had a late one, but we've gone through quite a bit, and we could probably keep talking for another few more hours.
We could.
You're very easy to talk to, and I think we're kind of on the same wavelength, which is good. And so I want to thank Damian. I want to thank the listeners as well. And mate, hopefully we can do a round 2 that's a little bit more focused on what you're doing as well. Not that we haven't delved into that, but, you know, there's more to learn from you. So everybody, thank you for joining us on this episode, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Damian, hang on the line with me. But for everyone else, have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Thanks, Sammy. And appreciate your efforts to make osteopathy great again. You're certainly, I think, just by putting yourself out there on a regular basis and having guests come on, of all types of guests that I've seen that you've had on your podcast, talking about all types of different topics. It can only get people, more thoughtful, more engaged, thinking about how they can make osteopathy great.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Good night, everyone. Damian, hang on the line with me, but to everyone else, have a good evening.